There are thousands of miles of roads in Polk County. Keeping sure that they're in good repair and ensuring that they are safe to travel on is a big job. There are many different factors to be considered when resurfacing a road, and today we'll learn more about this sometimes complicated and yet very necessary process. You're watching the Commissioner's Report. I'm your host, Tricia Pichette, and joining me today are Commissioner Bill Braswell and Roads and Drainage Director Jay Jarvis. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
So, as a member of the community of Polk County, when I'm driving down a road and I hit a pothole, I think,
Jay Jarvis.
Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done about this. What are the determining factors that a road has reached the point?
Well, let me back up before that.
Okay.
So, of all the things we deal with, roads and potholes and turn lanes and all these come up more and more so than anything else. At least in my time in office, that's what I've seen. And a lot of people have no concept of how much a road costs, which that has been a real eye-opener for me, and then how much it is to maintain one. And what I was impressed by when I got here was all the different ways. How many different ways do you resurface roads? It's like a dozen, right?
Yeah, there's like a dozen different techniques that we use to preserve and resurface a road and actually rebuild a road.
So, I mean, there's like a lot of thought that goes into it, and it's not, oh, you got a pothole, let's just go fill it. You got another pothole. After you get 10 potholes, let's just resurface it. These guys have all these different methods. They look at the road itself, how it's made, I suppose, and what it's made of. They're not always just pure asphalt. They come back and they analyze it and determine what's going to last the longest length of time, and that's kind of the whole deal here is to make it last. But tell them how you guys determine what roads need to work and what roads don't.
What the county does, well, let's address the pothole issue first. Potholes are a standalone item amongst themselves. If somebody sees a pothole, they can call the county and basically say there's a pothole here. We have a responsibility to fill that pothole in a defined period of time to basically keep people from damaging their vehicles and that type of thing. Of course, over time, multiple potholes, multiple locations, we get into what the condition of the roadway is. And the county, every 2 years, actually assesses every single road in the county. And so we actually have a ranking system and a rating system that we use that looks at what are the factors related to a road's condition. Cracking, potholes, is it a subsurface, something below the asphalt? Because most of your resurfacing is basically just dealing with the asphalt. But a lot of times there's issues with the subsurface, what we call the subgrade, the dirt part of a roadway. Then you've got basically a base that is typically made out of like lime rock or another material, hardened material, and then you put asphalt on top of it. Now, around Polk County, a lot of the roads are strictly, there's dirt and there's asphalt on top of it. Because of how we developed over time, as roads came into effect, there were dirt roads that started getting development on it. People started traveling those on a regular basis and basically said, this needs to be an asphalt road, so we'd go put asphalt on it. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens as you move forward and we continue to grow, you have new roads being built, and those roads are typically built to some type of standard, like I was talking about. You have the compacted dirt, you basically have a base that's a lime rock base or some type of stone material, and then you have the asphalt on top of it. Those are the standards for a typical road section. So over time, as we look at our inventory of roadways, which we have about 2,600 miles of road in Polk County that we inventory, like I said, like every 2 years and basically assess. What has happened over the years, it used to be what they called worst first. It was, if the road is bad, we do those, that's just where it is. If it's a bad road, we go do it. Mm. And what had happened in the industry of paving is the term pavement preservation became kind of a talking point over the years. And what that really means is, what can you do to keep a decent road
a decent
road for a longer period of time.
Okay.
And so there was different techniques developed as far as the preservation of a road, just keeping a good road good. And so those are the things that the county in the last few years have looked at to add to our typical resurfacing was what they called mill and fill. You mill out the old asphalt, you put in new asphalt. That's what you do.
On the spot, but average year after year, how many miles do we resurface?
We typically now, with these additional techniques that we're using, we typically do somewhere around 160 to 170 miles of roadway.
Wow.
With these techniques.
A year.
A year.
And I mean, that sounds like a lot to me.
It does to me too.
It's making the money go pretty far, I would think.
Yeah, you're stretching the money. We have done some analysis that we say if we were to keep the roads the same condition everything is currently, our estimate is we would have to spend about $25 million a year to basically keep everything status quo where it is.
So no new roads, just talking about
just
maintenance.
basically keeping the roads in the same condition overall around the county where they are right now.
Wow.
It would cost about $25 million. Because what you're looking at is basically a deterioration rate versus to maintain what exists and kind of finding that balance.
And then another issue came up over in Haines City. We had a sinkhole form,
Yes.
or begin to form under a road. Now you got a much bigger problem because not only do you have to take the asphalt up, you got to stop the sinkhole from sinking in, and that was like $1 million.
Yeah, about $1 million to basically stabilize the ground,
Wow.
backfill it, rebuild the road, and put that back in. Now that was unanticipated project that occurred, and that money was taken out of our pavement management program. So, you do have those are few and far between.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. Knock on wood and that type of thing. But yes, those are rare. We run into more pipe failures that impact our roadways, or a lot of what you find, because like I said, it's a lot of old dirt roads, is you'll find stumps in the bed of the road that basically has deteriorated and now creates a void, and that creates a void, and everybody thinks it's a sinkhole. But we run across that more than we do anything else.
Huh.
It's just basically when they were building the roads back then, they cleared, they buried everything, and they just built a road.
So how do you rank the roads? How do you decide what needs which process?
And what we've done is we've actually acquired a software program that actually looks at all the information data we collect based on the rating system we had developed, takes that information, basically then takes the funding available and applies that to our road network and says, based upon your available funding, the condition of the roads, these are the techniques that we think should be used on these roads, and basically creates a work plan for us to do year to year. And so we take that information, and then our staff, the county staff, looks at that, and then they kind of make a determination on what they think really needs to be possibly tweaked to look at that. Because typically what the program's looking at is looking at segments of roads, probably intersection to intersection. So all of a sudden it'll spit out, there's one intersection out in the middle of nowhere that they're saying needs to be done, and it's kind of like, well, that doesn't really make sense. And so that's what our staff looks at and kind of takes that information, puts it together and says, are there segments that we can put together kind of almost holistically to do an area or a road itself, rather than breaking it up into all these little individual segments? Because that's the big issue you run into with citizens. Is why did you only do half of my road or a portion of my road? And the other part is, of course, we have to deal with is, why did you do my neighbor's road and not my road, that maybe is the next street or the next subdivision over? Those are the things that we get, and we have to be able to justify and explain that to people, kind of what the process is that we're going to do, and then kind of why we made the decisions we do. And it's a difficult thing. People don't understand. People think a lot of times it's not what you know, but who you know, that type of thing, where they're saying, oh, well, who lives on that road that's pulling strings or stuff like that, or which commissioner is
Who knows Bill Braswell on that road?
Working on Berkeley Road.
Yeah. So he, but the commission really, in all honesty, kind of stays out of this process.
Tell me this, and I believe this is true, that, like you said before, roads weren't necessarily built to the greatest standards back in the day. They were just kind of put together. Now there's a certain standard, and it's going to make that road last a lot longer. So going forward, the roads we build are better, but we still got to fix the ones that have been around for 100 years.
And that's correct. I mean, the roads are lasting a lot longer. The newer subdivisions, we anticipate those roads to last up to 30 years potentially. And that's a great benefit to the county, because typically when you're doing a pavement management, after the first time you touch a road after it was originally built, you're talking 15 years generally is kind of the time frame where you're going to have to come back and do something. And so, having a road that lasts that long, once again, we get all those times where people call in and say, well, you haven't touched my road for 30 years. And we say, well, you're blessed, because that road's held up pretty well. And that's part of the rating system. Like I said, the other part of that is we're also looking, when we do that every 2-year rating, is basically the deterioration rate. If a road, of course, is deteriorating quicker than what we would anticipate it to, those roads probably need to be a higher priority, because they need to have something done, where the roads that are kind of staying status quo, maybe minimal deterioration, can last longer, and we can basically use those funds for other roads at that time.
So I guess if I'm out in the Northeast and I'm waiting on some of these road projects that are coming, and it's explained that these roads take a lot of money,
Right.
they cost a lot, because we're trying not only to build them, but to build them well so that they'll last.
To do it right the first time.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily how it was done, like I said before, but it's how we do it now. And it's, you have to do it that way, because we have such an extensive road network, what'd you say, over 2,600 miles?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. That's huge, and it's hard to keep up with. So we can't afford not to do it right now the first time.
Plus, we have the added part of the equation where we're in a climate that's kind of brutal on roads.
Yeah, and like we talked about, sinkholes and soft spots, and a lot of these old roads go through swamps or right next to swamps, and those things just break down over time.
Yeah. Well, this was fascinating, and who knew? There was so much science behind all of this.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, and I guess it keeps
It continues to evolve. The technology's continuing to improve. The products that are out there are continually to be, new things are being tried and looked at. Even when we talked about pothole patching is taking a whole different turn as far as the different types of equipment they're looking at to patch potholes.
You can probably get a pothole engineer degree now.
That's right. That's right.
Well, job security.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Well, thank you both for joining us. This was really interesting.
Well, thanks for letting us come on.